Mercy Watson, Something Wonky Comes This Way, written by Kate DiCamillo and illustrated by Chris Van Dusen. Chapter 1. Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson have a pig named Mercy. Mr. Watson, Mrs. Watson, and Mercy live together in a house at 54 Deckawoo Drive. On Saturday afternoon, Mr. Watson said to Mrs. Watson, "My darling, my dear, there's a movie at the Bijou called When Pigs Fly." "When Pigs Fly," said Mrs. Watson. "What an inspiring title. Mercy, did you hear?" Mercy did not hear. Mercy did not hear because Mercy was not listening. "It says here that the Bijou proudly serves real butter," said Mr. Watson. "Oh my," said Mrs. Watson, "real butter?" Mercy pricked up her ears. She was listening now. Mercy loved butter. She particularly loved butter on hot toast, but she would take butter any way she could get it. "Yes," said Mr. Watson, "it says here that the Bijou proudly serves real butter on every bottomless bucket of popcorn." "Bottomless?" said Mrs. Watson. "Bottomless," said Mr. Watson, "which means all you can eat." "All you can eat," said Mrs. Watson. "What a delightful concept." Mercy thought that all you can eat was a very delightful concept. "Let's go to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "Let's," said Mrs. Watson. "Oink," said Mercy. Chapter 2. "Where are you going?" said Baby Lincoln. "We're off to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "Oh," said Baby, "what movie are you going to see?" "It is a movie called When Pigs Fly," said Mrs. Watson. "Is it a romance?" said Baby. "Is it a movie about love?" "Well," said Mrs. Watson, "I think it's basically a movie about pigs flying." "Don't be ridiculous," said Eugenia Lincoln. "Pigs don't fly. It's a figure of speech." "What's a figure of speech?" said Mr. Watson. "The movie title," said Eugenia. "It's a figure of speech signifying the impossible." "Well," said Mrs. Watson, "we are going to be impossibly late if we don't get going." "Would you care to join us?" said Mr. Watson. "Yes," said Baby Lincoln. "Absolutely not," said Eugenia Lincoln. "Oh, sister," said Baby, "please say yes." "No," said Eugenia. But she got into the Watsons' convertible anyway. "Where are you going?" shouted Stella. "We're off to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "What kind of movie are you going to see?" said Frank. "Is it a romance?" "It's a romance," said Baby. "It will be inspirational," said Mrs. Watson. "It's a figure of speech," shouted Eugenia. "Is it a movie with a happy ending?" said Frank. "Oh, it must end happily," said Mrs. Watson. "Can we come too?" said Stella. "The more the merrier," said Mr. Watson. Chapter 3. Police Officer Tomilello had the night off. Officer Tomilello was at the Bijou Drive-In. He was with his wife, Mrs. Officer Tomilello. They were in the front row. "It is nice to have a night off from the relentless duties of keeping the world safe from crime," Officer Tomilello asked himself. "It is nice," he answered himself. "It is very nice." Mrs. Officer Tomilello smiled. Mrs. Officer Tomilello patted missed Officer Tomuelo's arm. Animal Control Officer Francine Poulet was at the Bijou Drive-In too. Animal Control Officer Francine Poulet was with Alfred P. Tompkins. Alfred P. Tompkins and Francine Poulet were on a date. Do you think that there will be actual pigs in this movie? Said Francine Poulet. I'm not certain, said Alfred P. Tompkins. As an animal control officer, said Francine Poulet, I have found pigs to be the wiliest clients of all. Really? Said Alfred. Absolutely, said Francine. Although I did catch a pig once. At least, I think I caught a pig. Fascinating, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Simply fascinating. He put his arm around Francine Poulet. Chapter 4. Leroy Ninker was a small man with a big dream. Leroy Ninker wanted to be a cowboy. But for now, Leroy was working at the Bijou Drive-In concession stand. Leroy Ninker was selling bottomless buckets of popcorn. Yippee-yi-oh, he shouted. There's nothing faux. That's right, it's real butter, folks, top quality, bottomless and out of this world. Yippee-yi-oh. In between pouring butter and popping popcorn, Leroy Ninker worked on his lasso skills. He twirled the lasso. He made the lasso whistle. He lassoed a bottomless bucket. He lassoed a stool. Yippee-yi-oh, sang Leroy. There's nothing faux about my skill with a lasso. Chapter 5. The Watson convertible pulled up to the Bijou ticket window. Help you, said ticket seller Beatrice Leopolonia. We are here to see when pigs fly, said Mr. Watson. Beatrice Leopolonia took her glasses off. She put her glasses back on. She blinked. Pardon me and all, said Beatrice Leopolonia, but I'm seeing things kind of wonky. Is that a pig in your back seat of your vehicle? Her name is Mercy, said Mr. Watson. She is our darling, our dear, said Mrs. Watson. I'm not sure pigs are allowed at the Bijou, said Beatrice Leopolonia. Actually, said Mr. Watson, she is a porcine wonder. Do you allow porcine wonders? Porcine wonders, said Beatrice Leopolonia. Yes, said Mrs. Watson. Beatrice Leopolonia blinked. I don't think there are any rules against porcine wonders, she said. Excellent, said Mr. Watson. Good evening to you, then. Beatrice Leopolonia blinked again. She adjusted her glasses. Wonky, said Beatrice Leopolonia. Wonky in the extreme. Chapter 6. Mercy put her snout up in the air. She sniffed. There was a wonderful smell. There was an incredible smell. There was a wonderful, incredible smell was everywhere. The wonderful, incredible smell was butter. Mr. Watson said, I think it's time for a bottomless bucket. Frank, why don't you and I go get some treats for the ladies? At the concession stand, the little man behind the counter said, Yippee-yi-ho, what do you know? Hey, said Mr. Watson, you're the man who robbed us. Robbed you? Said Frank. Yes, said Mr. Watson, he tried to take our toaster. My name is Leroy Ninker, said the little man. You're a thief, said Frank. Reformed, said Leroy Ninker. I'm a reformed thief, studying to be a cowboy. Well, good for you, Mr. Ninker, said Mr. Watson. We would like several bottomless buckets. Butter on those buckets, said Leroy. We would like a great deal of butter on those buckets, said Mr. Watson. Yippee-i-oh, said Leroy. That's the way to go. Chapter 7. The smell of butter was absolutely everywhere. The smell of butter was driving Mercy wild. Where was the butter smell coming from? Mercy thought she would go and investigate. She leaped out of the convertible. She moved with purpose. Was there anything more heavenly than being hot on the trail of a true butter smell? Mercy did not think so. She trotted faster. Mercy Watson was a pig on a mission. Chapter 8. Hey now, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Speaking of pigs, isn't that a pig right there? Where? Said Francine Poulet. There, said Alfred P. Tompkins. He pointed at the pig that was trotting past the truck. The pig had its snout up in the air. The pig looked very happy. That, said Francine Poulet, is the pig from Deckawoo Drive. I have dealt with that pig before. I wonder what a pig is doing at the movies, said Alfred P. Tompkins. That's a good question, said Francine. That's the kind of question that only an animal control officer can answer. Fascinating, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Don't make any sudden movements, said Francine Poulet. She reached into the back of her truck. She grabbed her net. If you want to see an animal control officer in action, said Francine Poulet, follow me. Fascinating, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Simply fascinating. I'm right behind you.